that's what used to work here.
Yes, it's Sarah Buck Garcia now.
Garcia, that's right. too.
Yes. She just took I know Nick
Okay,
too.
we are on, folks. So I would like to open up the Georgetown Planning Board February 25th, 2015 agenda. We're going to begin with approval of minutes.
February 4th minutes are still being worked on, so you can pass on those. They'll be ready for the next meeting.
Okay.
She's on, Mary Ellen's almost done.
February 11th minutes. I didn't have any issues with them. I don't know if anyone else had any corrections.
I did. I noticed an edit.
Nothing but
Just
trouble.
the
She's
next regularly
always been
scheduled
nothing but
meeting,
trouble.
I had the wrong date. I had a March 11th. I skipped a meeting, so I already fixed it on my copy.
All right. Well, you're better at it than us.
So
Okay.
as
I move
amended.
we accept the minutes as written.
All right.
I'll second it.
So it's been motioned to approve the meeting minutes as written, and it's been seconded. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Vicky, correspondence.
We have 3 items. Of note is the Town of Georgetown Zoning Board of Appeal. Appeal of building inspector's determination. This is regarding 3 Farm Lane, so we can bring it up under new business.
Okay. Vouchers, I see we do not have any, so we're gonna move into public hearings. First public hearing is the new bylaw, affordable accessory housing, continued from the January 28th meeting. And
We've got Frank from the Affordable Housing Task Force and 2 members of the public here, so it's good that we're taking it first.
great, all right. Frank, you wanna come up? Sure. You don't have to, but it might be a good idea.
We received,
Whatever your preferences is fine.
we received comments or responses from the Affordable Housing Task Force via email on Thursday afternoon. They didn't make it into the packet, but they are part of your meeting supplement that's provided here.
I don't know your name.
Matthew Martin.
Matthew Marco?
Martin.
Martin,
Mhm.
thank you.
And Matt is also a member of the task force.
All right, nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
So, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to specifically highlight in the response, or otherwise we'll just come right to the board, but you have first crack at it.
Have you had the opportunity to review our response?
I did. Did the other board members
I
have
did
an
not,
opportunity?
no.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Okay. So, might be a good idea then to,
All right, well,
Go
Matt
over
is
some.
actually the author of the response, so I'm gonna let him
Okay.
walk you through it, if that's okay.
sure.
Just in time.
Apologize for coming in just a tad late here.
No problem,
Here, you want-
If there's, yeah, I'm pulling it up now. If there's specific questions, I'm happy to address them, otherwise we can just jump into the responses.
Please.
So, my first point was that many of the community concerns about the affordable housing, the proposed amendment that we've submitted, many of the concerns were simply concerns about affordable housing. Affordable housing is something that the state has mandates Georgetown and every town in Massachusetts to have. Those concerns, they may be very valid. They're nevertheless besides the point, because affordable housing is mandated by the state. And I apologize, I'm just a little winded.
No problem. Take your time.
Sure,
Life's too short.
yeah. So, affordable housing is going to be part of Georgetown, whether we care for it, whether we like it or not, whether the concerns are valid or not. The issue is, does this proposed amendment allow us to take the affordable housing requirements that we have and approach affordable housing in a more cost-effective way and in a way that the town has control over versus for example, a 40B project, which the town would have very little control over. The planning board has submitted very specific questions, the answers to which we provided, but just generally speaking, these units would be something that the zoning board would have the first crack at, essentially to have an opportunity to say the specific concerns about the community, not enough parking, issues with the individual locations, but then also the apartments would have to comply with the state regulations. many of which are very onerous on a homeowner. The planning board had suggested that a site plan might be appropriate. The task force believes that that's a step that would be prohibitively expensive for the proposed landlord, and also very likely unnecessary, as the zoning board would have the ultimate authority to say, well, there's just not enough parking in that area, there's not enough parking in your particular location in order to allow that unit to take place. If the planning board disagrees, we're open to suggestions, but we think that that is an issue that would very likely take this option away from pretty much everyone that might otherwise consider it.
What would take away?
The requirement to do a site plan.
Okay.
Number one, the other burdens that are gonna be on a homeowner to meet with the requirements the state puts on are gonna be, quite frankly, are gonna be pretty high. It's gonna be a pretty high standard for the homeowner to meet. Very likely will involve meeting with the Affordable Housing Task Force on several occasions in order just to simply meet the requirements of the state's requirements. Will likely involve some attorney's fees to handle the deed amendments, things of that nature, the deed rider that would have to be put into place. To add on top of that also a site plan approval, I think would be prohibitively expensive for most homeowners.
Give
Sure.
Matt a chance to catch his breath. The zoning board, during their hearing, will hear all the neighbors' concerns. They'll hear any, the basis for the hearing is to determine whether the addition of the apartment or the approval of the apartment is detrimental to the area or detrimental to the community or the town in itself. So any of these concerns that the neighbors would have would certainly be voiced at this meeting, and if they were substantial and they were
Particularized.
valid,
Yeah.
right, they would certainly play into the decision of the zoning board, and at their option, they could deny the permit. This is not a rubber stamp. This is something that the property owner has to prove that is not going to cause problems for the people, his neighbors, or the community as a whole.
I think the important part there is that they would have to be particularized concerns versus just a general concern of affordable housing, which is, again, as we talked about, something that is simply not within the purview of the town to approve or not deny. It's something the state has mandated. The town has asked, the planning board has asked us to include a limitation on the number of special permits that could be issued. I did amend the proposed bylaw to include a limitation of 10 units per year. This is a completely arbitrary number. The number could be 5, it could be 50. It's an arbitrary number. An explanation of the revocation process is required. Both the proposed bylaw as well as the state's requirements under for the DHCD have very specific requirements. If those requirements aren't met, there's an automatic revocation process built right into both the bylaw and the DHCD proposed deed rider. So if for whatever reason the homeowner failed to comply, it would no longer be listed on the DHCD, and therefore it wouldn't be meeting the requirements of this bylaw.
And it would be the building inspector's
The
job
special permit would be revoked,
Correct.
right, by the building.
by the building inspector.
The other side of that is the voluntary termination of the permit that the property owner can do under the regulatory agreement in section 10. So they have there is a process they have to go through. They just can't abandon it, but they certainly have the right and the power to terminate the permit at their choice.
And the town is notified of this, that it's the ZBA or us, by the state, because this is a state agency that revokes the permit.
Yes. So
Are we notified, or do we have to,
The zoning board is the permit granting authority, so they'll be notified.
so they would be notified? Okay.
Yeah, it says notification by the owner of said dwelling to the zoning board of appeals of his or her desire to cancel the special permit upon date certain and recording of said notice of cancellation. So it would be the property owner's responsibility to notify the zoning board that he wished to cancel the permit. So the town would be notified.
if they wish to terminate.
Right.
Right.
It's a voluntary termination, yeah.
So the planning board asked for an explanation of the regulatory agreement, and I'll let Frank talk in some detail about the regulatory agreement. But it is nevertheless, it's an 8-page document. It's very hard in any kind of meaningful way to summarize it. If there were particular concerns that the planning board had, I can almost guarantee that in an 8-page regulatory agreement, the state is addressing many of those concerns. But I'll let Frank talk for a few minutes on what is contained in the regulatory agreement.
Well, the regulatory agreement basically spells out the responsibility of the owner of the town. And-
That's in your, I'm sorry, Frank,
I'm
that's in
sorry.
your packet. It's got at the top, Local Initiative Program, and you'll hear the acronym for LIP.
Local Initiative Program.
Right. It's a pretty, it's a long, detailed document that outlines the process and what is required for the marketing of the units once they're approved. And it goes into great length in a lot of different things, and it basically makes sure that everybody that should be in play is in play. The town will have the responsibility every year to report to DHCD that this unit is still valid. There will be monitoring of this unit by a monitor who is paid, if the town dictates, by the property owner, who will monitor the tenants that they qualify under the terms of this regulatory agreement. And they will, the monitor will then report to the town, who will then report to DHCD. So this is not a situation where the process gets approved and it gets forgotten about. It's going to be watched carefully by a lot of people. Obviously, if there are problems and issues, any of the neighbors would have the right to come back to the zoning board and or file a complaint with the building inspector, and then based on his decision, come back to the zoning board to change or rescind the permit. It's not, like I said, like Matt said, this is a very long, dense document, but it pretty much spells out everything that
Sets out the guidelines for what qualifies a person to be a affordable housing recipient. It does require, and this is probably one of the biggest burdens on the landlord, it does require that certain requirements are met to make sure that it's not essentially just Joe the landlord brings in Frank his friend and says, you know, this is going to be an affordable housing situation. It has to be put out to the community, has to be put out to and publicized, and
The lottery, you notice how
Exactly.
the whole lottery would operate.
Exactly. So-
Selection be made.
so it'd have to be advertised and make the availability known to the community so that the prospective pool of people that would qualify for this affordable housing unit would be well advertised. And then at that point, frankly, this is gonna be something we're gonna have to work with the state on a little bit if this is approved, but the landlord is not gonna have a substantial amount of input into which of the people that apply, as long as they're a qualified applicant, would be selected to be the tenant in that location. I think that provides, obviously, some protection for the state's requirements. Personally, from my standpoint, from a landlord's perspective, situation, that would, to me, be a detriment to this whole process. There are other landlords out there that perhaps that's not necessarily a drawback, but I can certainly understand landlords being hesitant in that situation.
In the LIP is signed by who?
By the landlord homeowner.
Right. And
but it's signed by quite a few people,
As
actually.
well as the state.
then
Yeah.
it's recorded at the Registry of Deeds, so
Right.
everyone understands what everyone's agreed to.
Right.
Correct.
And who drafted this? The state?
State.
And this is a model agreement. The DHCD reserves the right to amend it if the landlord said there was a circumstance that didn't 100% meet this, but that it was in the spirit of the agreement, they're open to discussion And they, they will amend this agreement and approve a modified version. The other thing that's, this also spells out clearly the income limits that are for the applicants and where they can be. And basically, it's 80% of the median income, which I believe in this area right now is about $60,000. So if you take 80% of that, or it's 65, it's the approved generally for it's in the vicinity of $50,000. So if you're making $50,000 or less, you would qualify under this.
For a family of two?
I believe it's for a family of two, yeah. It doesn't go up that much, strangely, with the size of the
No.
family, but it does go up. The landlords are obviously going to try to get as much rent as they possibly can. And this is one of the drawbacks to 40B, is that it generally targets people that are right at that 80% level. Because if the landlords are going to charge a rent that's affordable to somebody at that level, then it's going to exclude everybody below that level. So generally what you find, the people that you find that are beneficiaries of this type of housing are people that are right at that $50,000 level. It's because it doesn't make sense for, the landlord can charge anything he wants up to a point that's affordable to somebody there. So that's generally where where you find the market for your prospective tenants is right in that range. So it's not low income, it's more moderate income.
Just jumping back into the questions the
Yep.
plan boarding had submitted, there was a concern about item F, about the single family characteristics. This piece of the language was copied wholesale from the currently existing bylaw. If there are concerns about the language, to be consistent, we would need to also amend the existing bylaw. But nevertheless, if there's specific concerns of the planning board, we're happy to incorporate them, but that's as it exists, as we sit here now, in the currently existing bylaw. There was a few specific language requests for clarification. We have incorporated them into the new proposed bylaw. As far as the square footage requirements, there was some confusion even among the task force as we went back and reread it about exactly what it was saying, so I did make some amendments to the language. I believe it now states exactly what we had intended. If there's still confusion, please let me know, but I think it has now been addressed, that essentially, not essentially, but that it states that the apartment shall not exceed the greater of 700 square feet or 1/3 of the total square footage of the existing unit.
And again, that's wholesale from the existing bylaw, so the unclear verbiage in that probably should be looked at in the existing bylaw as well.
Although the new language is obviously new language.
I apologize, just backing up, language revised, number 9. Item C, clarify in case of new construction, or delete to be consistent with item H. What about existing town accepted street? Is what you're saying H applies to, is this what you're saying is clarifying that, and we're keeping the same language?
I'm saying that the language as written, the two provisions deal with separate issues, so I'm not sure that they need to be consistent. One deals with the existing road and one deals with a new built road. If I'm missing the planning board's point on that, please let me know, but when I read it, I didn't see how the two related to one another.
Okay,
H only applies to a new subdivision.
I'm sorry?
H would only apply where there is a new subdivision. The dwellings in new developments. So that only applies when there's a new development and a road that's being built to create the unit. What was the other?
So with H, Frank, just to extrapolate that a little bit, if a new development went in and the road was never accepted by the town, then you couldn't create one of these
Right,
affordable
exactly.
accessory units.
Right. You're required to have an approved road. It's been accepted by the town. So that only applies to new developments and new roadways. What was the other section? I'm sorry.
C.
C?
Believe, right?
No, it was,
C, you said applies to all new construction.
C is the,
In C, in case of new construction,
okay, yeah, I'm just,
the
all right.
aforementioned will apply to the planned primary dwelling.
Right, so if somebody was on an existing lot on an existing roadway,
And put up
The-
a new,
and they came in with a plan for a house, they haven't, that they were gonna, we've had this, Tilly, when we were on the zoning board. They came in with a plan, so it will apply to the plan for new construction of a new dwelling, or two new dwellings in this case. So that doesn't apply, you can see where there's a difference, where one is on an existing roadway. This just basically says if you're in a subdivision, you don't have an approved road, you can't apply.
Right.
Maybe it's the context that I'm missing, and maybe you can help me with it, Howard, but, so I understand how H applies to new developments and C is applying to all new construction. So what you're saying is the language as currently written would stay the same?
yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
we-
I didn't make any changes to either of those
Okay,
provisions.
because you didn't see the connection between.
I
the two.
didn't, and if I misunderstood the planning board's question, I'm happy to make changes, but
Yep.
I just didn't see the connection there.
Okay.
And
Can
then,
you-
okay.
Can you help with the context of that and where that came from? Can you remind?
As I recall in the meeting, that it was just a concern of the board that they thought it conflicted between the two. But the way it's being explained, it makes more sense. Item H deals with just dwellings in new subdivisions. The street is, for instance, at Turning Leaf, those roads need to be accepted by the town before anybody comes in and makes a special permit application for one of these type of units.
Yeah.
Item C deals with if someone has an undeveloped lot and wants to create a home, then if it's on a town-accepted street, that they can make application with that for that special permit.
Okay.
So,
I tried to think of a scenario where somebody could have come to the town and say, we want this permit, and one of the two would conflict with another, and I couldn't come up with a scenario, but if there is one.
I think it probably should be a completed subdivision, because it's been taken, in this town anyway, a long time to get the streets accepted at town meeting. And plus, there's several courts and lanes that wanna make the street private. That's another thing we're running into, so maybe it just should say completed subdivision.
So
It
do I-
doesn't
so
have to
you're-
be an
you're talking-
accepted road, just
you're talking
have all
about-
the lots developed.
About item H now.
Yeah,
Dwelling units and new developments may apply for special permit
Yes.
after the development has been accepted
Yeah.
by the town?
yeah, approved by the planning board.
Honestly, this is something that
I mean,
is
You
more.
guys, if you wanna, yeah, whatever you wanna do
This
is
is,
fine.
this is more for
That's
for
more of
your-
a planning issue.
Yeah,
than
planning
it
issue than it is a housing.
Waiting for my constituents here. Do you have any objection to that?
Not particularly. I'd kind of like to see how much change there really is. Isn't there, aren't we running out of time here?
Sometimes it goes on for years without the road being accepted. I mean, Cedar Lane was 11 years. But an example of what Tilly's talking about is Jefferson Court, a two-lot court, and that's never going to be accepted by the town. But the houses in the back, they may ask for an in-law apartment, or they may ask for, if this is approved, an accessory apartment. And so now you're getting into the subdivision, it's approved, but the road's never gonna be accepted.
Yeah, and the one around the corner from me, is private road. Little Hills. That's all,
Little
that
Hill, yeah.
whole thing is private road. So there's like, what, 35, 40 houses on it?
I mean, it sounds like your suggestion would broaden the availability of the units, which, I mean,
Yes.
that's,
That's what I'm I'm hoping.
Could you may want to make it that after can only apply after an occupancy permit has been granted, because that would give you some clarity. It's kind of hard, I mean,
Well, that would be just, the house would, naturally, they would get an occupancy permit if just one family moves into it, buys it, and,
mhm.
but we're talking about the neighborhood. We wanna make sure that all the neighbors and all the lots, those people know about the application going in.
And I think that's the purpose, really probably the purpose, that you just hit on why that, I could never figure out why that was there, now I guess I know. So,
Well,
That's the idea.
with Frank talking about an occupancy permit, to me, that's creeping closer to C. If you were gonna modify H, it would wait for the whole subdivision to be built.
Mm,
And so the character is established, and then if someone wants to make a special permit, then they could.
okay.
would you consider a court a development?
A court is a special permit in a definitive subdivision application.
Yeah,
So that would be considered a
yeah,
development?
they have to follow the subdivision regs.
Could we change it to dwelling units in regular subdivisions?
Say that again?
Dwelling units in regular subdivision developments? Because would the court be a regular subdivision development?
No, a court's a special permit.
No, I think no is good.
Well, I think that would allow you
But
to
it-
differentiate between.
Mary Ellen
courts.
suggested it could be once,
Okay.
we're passing notes. She just has a suggestion that it could be, once the development provides as-bills. So once the as-bills are provided to the board, where all the houses have been, where the road has been, and
Mhm.
as-bills are part of the subdivision road acceptance.
I know.
And so, once the as-bills are provided, it may be a few years till the street acceptance is done, but at least you have.
But you've done the part that
I think
counts.
that's,
Yeah,
yeah, it just
that's a
Yeah.
good benchmark in completion of a subdivision.
needs to be something that's clear, and I think that's clear.
Yeah, that's good. You're
So
buddy
if
today.
you, if you tell me the language as it should be, I'll make the change and email it to, back over to Howard. Dwelling units and new developments may apply for special permit after.
Yeah, so-
Subdivision, road as-bills have been provided and approved by the planning board.
Okay, and divided and approved,
Provided.
provided. And that's a term that would be otherwise described somewhere else in the bylaws.
It is.
Okay.
Did the neighbors get a copy of this? Oh, fine.
There's the copies
Do we have
over
another copy? There we go.
I have my copy. You
That's okay, I'll get,
could, Tim's.
oh, we don't have, Tim's coming, so,
Or Harry's.
did Harry, we make one for Harry?
Because I printed mine out.
Thanks.
And then the final issue is, one of the members of the community had raised concern about an owner occupancy in Massachusetts being someone that resides in Massachusetts for 6 months and a day. We did put in a modified language requiring that the owner occupy the unit.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Can you go back to 10?
Of course.
Better definition or description of the square foot limits? I
Yep.
know you.
Yep, so that's the, if we were to look at
The whole thing, but
unit, I'm sorry, paragraph C. I did modify that language just a little bit. Maximum livable floor area for an accessory apartment shall not exceed 33% of the total livable floor area of the existing primary dwelling or 700 square feet, whichever is greater. And that was in the interest of just clarifying exactly what we were hoping to accomplish with that.
And how did that respond to, I think where that concern was coming from was 33% of a large home
4,200 square
was
foot home was,
a significant unit.
right.
So how did, how do you think that responds to that issue?
I don't actually think it responds to that issue. I think it responds to the lack of clarity in the way it was previously written.
Okay.
But no, it doesn't address that issue, because, I mean, I'm not sure that it's something that requires addressing. If a person has a house of that size, I fail to see what the relevance is that the apartment that happened to be renting happens to be a larger apartment.
I suppose it would all be context related. If the site was kind of small and they added on a chunk that big, it could, you know.
Again,
So that would go back to the zoning board having the authority to.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
to say that this just doesn't conform with the community.
Yeah.
A
neighborhood.
4,000 square foot home, 33% would be a 1,320 square foot addition.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm not sure where I'm at with that one. Okay. All right, thank you. I just wanted to.
And then you
back
start
up.
getting to livable floor area,
Yeah,
1 story, 2 story.
But it's apples to apples too. It's a livable floor area in the existing structure as well. So if you've got the footprint of the building is, the footprint of the floors in the building are 4,400 square feet. The livable area is probably 80% of that, because you're cutting out hallways and everything else. And that's gonna accrue to the other side as well. So that you're gonna be, 4,400 could actually be 4,000.
yeah,
And so it'll be a third of that.
yeah. I think, what I'm struggling with a bit about that 33%, just as a broader example, is, the notion of just going back where, just hanging the hat on the ZBA, determining in a verbal discussion, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate,
Well,
33%,
I have a,
whether that's appropriate or not, versus giving them standards that they get to work with is it's just a fundamental, question that I'm struggling with.
I currently have an in-law apartment in my house that we got approved 20-something years ago. And we had to bring in plans, plot plans, the whole 10 yards. It wasn't like they just, it was nobody went out, they came out and looked. So it's not like you're just walking in with nothing and saying, we want to do this.
Sure.
So in some ways, not in the intensity, but it mimics a site plan review, because you're looking at all the aspects and what problems this new construction could, either new construction or it could be existing
Yeah,
construction could bring.
yeah, okay.
I just want to point out on the subject of floor area and livable space, and previous meeting, there's discussion about, well, you could build a 1-bedroom, but a family of 3 is going to move in, or something like that. In the regulatory agreement, this LIP, Local Initiative Program, it states that the minimum areas for a studio, 1-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom, the minimum area for a 2-bedroom is 900 square feet. So if somebody has a 3,000 square foot home, they wouldn't be able to, they'd be able to construct a 1,000 square feet, so it would be a 2-bedroom. If someone has a 2,000 square foot home, they wouldn't be able to construct a 2-bedroom. It'd have to be a 1-bedroom in order for this to be approved through that. So the ability for somebody to live in a 2,000 square foot home, build 33%, and then create a 2-bedroom and have a family of 4 move in is difficult, if not impossible, so.
What's that based on?
The regulatory agreement, which is attached to the package.
Department of Housing and Community Development guidelines.
Tim, we were just talking about, in their response to, the planning board's questions, we were talking about, number 10, item number 10, which was the board had asked for some better definition about the square foot limits of these units. So that's what we're just discussing right now. And in their requirements, they clarified it, but then we were just talking about this 33% issue. So,
I think one topic you addressed, but I don't think that it's been answered, is does the zoning board have enough information here on what the town's intention is with the size limitation of 33%. And I think that's goes to item number F, preservation of single-family characteristics. And I think it also is just, I mean, it's inclusive in the idea that it shouldn't be more than a third of the size of the house. So that we clearly have this is clearly an owner-occupied preference, and the owner of the home has the preference here, and that's what we need to be focused on. But then if there's also an apartment, then that needs to be very much subordinate to the main house. And I think that's clear enough for the zoning board personally.
As an accessory, just
Right.
definition,
Right.
right.
And the other thing is the 33% is a limitation. It's only worked in for a smaller unit.
Mhm.
If they feel that that's too much, they can make a condition that the unit is only so many, you know, is somewhat less or a little less than what that 33% would be.
Yeah,
then-
they still, all said and done, they still have to consider what the neighborhood looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and what this is going to be proposed to look like in the neighborhood. So there's, with the special permit, there's a leeway.
It's not an easy process to go through, sometimes,
No.
right? I went through it.
So, okay, so then, what, number 11, I think was the
Number
last
11.
one?
Owner occupancy in Massachusetts is defined as 6 months and a day. We did require in the modified language of the bylaw a minimum of 9 months occupancy in the home in order to qualify for this. And again, that's, frankly, it's an arbitrary number that we decided may help reach some of the concerns that were raised in the last meeting.
Why do you think the owner occupancy shouldn't be defined as year-round?
Well, so if a person were to take a month-long vacation, should that take them out of this? If a person spends 2 months in Florida during the winter, should that automatically mean that they shouldn't qualify for this? I'm not quite sure with the connection there.
I mean, if somebody's gonna live next door to somebody for 9 months, they're gonna know, then there's gonna be a pretty good relationship there, and I think that the controls that are put in place for during that 9-month period would most probably continue on for a short break of a month here and a month there, or even for a 3-month span. It's not like it's an absentee landlord, that, I don't think any of us would want that.
All right. Was there anything else that you wanted to highlight right now about this? Because then I just wanted to ask the public their comments, questions right now, and then I guess we'll just bring it back to the board.
No, I think that's.
Thanks a lot for your work on
Absolutely.
it. Folks? Yeah, well, if you want to introduce yourself for the record and all that sort of stuff.
How can you require 9 months when the state only requires 6 for residency? Require that you only be here a certain, I believe it's 6 months and a day, or 6 months or a few days more, which is what Saugus has on their books for their permit, because this is how you get your license, and this is how, you know, so legally, a person is a resident of Massachusetts and get a car license and pays registration to wherever they reside by their so-called residency. And so they assume you occupy it, you can come and go as you leave, as you want, and then if you go to Florida for 6 months, that's fine, but you're not, you know, your legal residency is here, so how can you require that that person live here, and who's checking on him?
We have two very different standards. The state has set for issuing a license and other things would be 6 months and a day. The standard the town would be setting for allowing an accessory apartment would be 9 months. Those two things are completely consistent.
But you can have both. You can have both, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The towns, oftentimes towns will have more restrictive zoning ordinances than the state will have.
Yeah, I understand that, but that seems right, well, that's fine, that was one of the issues that I had addressed, because I did some research myself, okay.
So did you have some other
Yeah, well,
questions
you go
or
first.
items that you wanted to
Okay.
talk about?
You sit here or
Sure, whatever suits your fancy, if you
Just make
just
sure he
introduce
addresses it to the
yourself.
board, and then the board can
Yeah,
address it.
yeah, and it's just,
Actually, I'm gonna slide my chair up. I feel kind of silly sitting back there or standing up in front of this. First of all, my name's Bob Rattay. I'm the other half of the woman that was just speaking. I know she spoke to you guys a month ago when you had the meeting, and I was out of town, so I couldn't, and I believe I sent an
read your
email to you, and you read the email.
Correspondence.
I thank you guys for that. What I want to do, I heard everything, and I respect everything that you said about how detailed the regulation that's been written is, and how your feeling was that most of the issues were issues about affordable housing. And I want to distinguish between somebody who doesn't want affordable housing and somebody who's raising the reality of that a neighborhood exists a certain way. We don't put mobile homes on lots in neighborhoods. And it's not because we're against affordable housing, it's because it doesn't fit what is the structure of that neighborhood, what is the typical home in that neighborhood. I think we'd go around town and we'd find that the price range in a neighborhood is somewhat limited. We don't normally have $3 million houses next to $200,000 houses. We can find exceptions, but generally the values of houses in the neighborhood are somewhat similar. So I think there's a distinction between not wanting affordable housing and saying affordable housing should be done, but it should be done so that it doesn't jeopardize the nature of existing neighborhoods. A new neighborhood, whatever you think is appropriate with this zoning, but an existing neighborhood, people bought houses in that neighborhood with an understanding of what a residential building permit meant. That was the rules of the game. And I kind of feel like this this is changing the rules of the game. You're saying now that my neighborhood can change from what I bought into. I can now have rental units in my neighborhood. I can have essentially, you can mince the words, but it's two-family houses. And that's not what I bought when I bought my house. So I have a real concern about how this would be managed to ensure that existing neighborhoods maintain their structure and what was intended and what people bought. Now, I think residential zoning has existed in Massachusetts for I don't know how long, probably more than 100 years. And we're talking about now tinkering with that. And I kind of look at this, that this is an important thing. And it should be just like what we say to doctors, do no harm. So we should err on the side of conservatism, because this is something that has existed quite well and worked quite well for more than 100 years, and a little bit of tinkering it could end up with a house of cards because you didn't mean that, you didn't think of that, and now you've got something grandfathered in that isn't going to go away because you just didn't anticipate that whatever that is going to happen. So that's a statement that I wanted to make.
Can you just, can you clarify, help me understand what you just said a little better there?
Sure.
In terms of,
If down the road, somebody can qualify for affordable housing by being 4 college students, and when I was a college student, 4 of us lived in less than 700 square feet and didn't have a problem with that at all, and some of you may be able to relate to that. So if they can meet the affordable housing because they have no friggin' income, all of a sudden can we have units in residential areas that are essentially college dorms? Oops, we didn't think of that. But now we got it.
so.
Can I address that? Or-
Is there anything in the,
Take all the comments
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to do that, because
can
we'll
you
be getting
point
back
out
and
where
forth
in the
first.
bylaw that's proposed indicates to you that college students can,
Well, I don't find
Rent them?
anything in the bylaw that says that the people that rent have to be related. And as long as they don't have to be related, they could be 4 college students.
What
They have to be a
I'm,
family.
what I'm trying to do is just clarify what he's telling us without then getting
I'm
into.
trying to do the same. I'm trying
Well, I
to
thi-
say where in the bylaw.
I can,
Indicates
well, it's
to
it's in the
you
regulatory,
what happened.
it's in the regulatory agreement.
Okay, so if you continue.
Okay, so I mean, that's, my concern is that we may make our neighborhoods different as a result of this, different from what the residents of those neighborhoods wanted and had, or thought they had when they bought into it. The second piece of what I want to do, and a little bit was answered by some of the questions that were addressed that you guys had, that these guys just answered as I was sitting here, so I'm going to kind of skip through some of the things, but the rest of mine is concerns because I didn't see specificity in what I had exposure to, and I may not have exposure to everything, so maybe it's there and I don't know it is. But we must have an objective of a certain number of affordable housing units we want. It seems to me that should be defined, and it seems to me that objective should then should have a stop loss for this. We get there and then we don't issue any more permits, because we're not here to just convert Georgetown to affordable housing. We're here for an objective, to keep a grant coming in or whatever it may be. So let's put something in the wording of this that says that we don't go on forever. It only goes a certain number of units or a certain number of years or whatever it may be, so that in case we turned out to make a mistake, we don't make it forever. We put in built-in protection in this to have a place that it ends. I don't see anything that indicates how long this can go on. Can somebody rent this for an indefinite period of time? When they sell the house, is the new owner of the house now a landlord and capable of renting to, again, whomever fits the housing requirements, so that once we agree to this, I heard how the owner can turn in the permit or change the permit, but I didn't hear anything that said this permit's going to have a limited life, and at the end of that life, then it expires. Or at a minimum, it has to be re-looked at to determine whether Georgetown wants to continue to issue it. So that they would be like a license plate. Each one of these permits would only last a year or 2 or 3, and then they would be up for renewal. And they could be turned down for whatever reason Georgetown felt was appropriate to turn it down. If nothing else, they no longer needed that to maintain the percent that they want of affordable housing. I am not privy to anything that indicates an analysis has been done to understand what impact this can have on the school system. It's one thing to bring in, for example, a senior housing development, which brings lots of taxes and no demand on the schools. It's another thing to say that somebody's existing home is going to get minor modifications, which is going to add a small amount to the tax base, and may bring in 4 people with 2 children. That is going to put a significantly larger demand on the school system than the extra taxes that are going to be brought in as a result of whatever modifications are made to the house. It seems to me, before you guys make a decision, that analysis should be done to ensure that you're not walking into something that you didn't think of. I commented on whether renders must be related to each other, and apparently there is something in the wording that says that, and that's great. I heard the explanations related to things like parking, but I guess what I wasn't comfortable with is things like don't have a site plan, and it was kind of like, well, we don't want to have a site plan because it'll cost some money, but a site plan's point is to avoid screw-ups, to avoid undoing things. So when you get to the point when you say, oh, all you have is a big long driveway and you can't really park cars in that because you got to move them out of the way to get one out. We need actual parking spaces. Or do we need covered parking spaces based on the way this neighborhood is, where everybody has garages and all their cars are in the garages? And now all of a sudden we're going to have a parking lot that takes up part of the land of this, which changes the nature of the neighborhood again, which was earlier comment. And again, I'm not privy to something, and I haven't seen anything in the writing that indicates whether, particularly since we've allowed building in smaller and smaller lots as the years have gone by, whether you can automatically add 2 bedrooms worth of additional people, which is 4, maybe 5 more people, depending on ages of kids. And do we know that septic systems can handle this on the size that the lot is? And has that analysis been done? It says that now a house that was okay for 5 or 6 people, now has 10 people in it?
Well, the
I
Board
will
of Health
say-
would have to
Yeah,
approve that.
the Board of Health won't allow bedrooms to be added that exceed the capacity of the septic.
Okay, so you're saying it doesn't have to be written into this because it's covered by,
They wouldn't get their building
Correct,
permit.
they
Right,
wouldn't get the
right.
building permit.
and I think that's it. I've Xed out a couple of ones that are covered by what I heard earlier.
All right, well, thank you. Just ever so briefly, if you guys wanted to just respond quickly to a couple of them, otherwise I'd like to just bring it to the board right now.
First of all, on the college dorm, and Tilly, you alluded to some of this. These are to be rented to a family unit. A college dorm situation for college students wouldn't qualify as a family unit unless they were related by blood or marriage. And so that's just a concern that, and, well, I guess what we're gonna define as that, I guess, is spelled out by the state. So that's just not a concern that really could actually take place. It would have to be, like, once again, a family unit related by blood or marriage. The objective of affordable housing units that we want in this town, as mandated by the state, is 10% of the housing stock. If we're not meeting that requirement, then then it's subject to the town to 40B developments, unfriendly 40B developments. We've been doing substantial research on this and trying to find ways to get the town in compliance and keep above that 10% number. Every project that we've looked at every calculation that we've done suggests that we're going to be looking at anywhere from $20,000 to $150,000 per unit for the town to be adding a unit to the SHI. This costs the town nothing. So if there's ever a situation where the town should be supporting something, that should be this, because it's not costing the town anything. Neighborhoods change. This doesn't add any new. When a person buys their house in Georgetown now, there's an existing bylaw that allows for rental of a portion of that house, as long as the person is related by blood or marriage. This just expands one aspect of that in order to allow people that are not related by blood or marriage, as long as they meet this other requirement. Much of what the gentleman said, I respect his concerns, but much of what he's saying is simply stating, I don't mind affordable housing as long as it's in a different part of town. And that goes contrary to what affordable housing is about. Affordable housing is making sure that the community has affordable housing requirements and that they're met. And if they can be met by adding very, very small and very limited increases in pressure on throughout the community, personally, I think that that's a much better way to handle it than by having a focused area of affordable housing in one part of town.
I saw a couple of the questions as being, was even stated as being grandfathered in. Could you just talk a little bit about the, it's a special permit and how that special permit applies to the unit and not necessarily to the house or the owner, and what the life cycle on that special permit is, and so what's the ability or inability for one of these units to be constructed on a house and then the house be sold?
As far, right now, if the house is sold, the regulatory agreement is registered with the Registry of Deeds, so the regulatory agreement travels with the property. So it would not, the new owner would have the privilege of, or the opportunity to rent to affordable tenants if he so chose to.
So this is an eternal decision when you issue it?
Once it's been granted, if a landlord, if the new owner decides to be a landlord, they've been approved in order, if they meet these requirements, yes, they would be approved, the unit would be approved indefinitely, so long as the people continue to operate under the regulatory agreement.
Frank, is there a mechanism in the regulatory agreement where if they get approved for the unit, how long between that approval must or should, or are they able to get this special permit, the regulatory agreement recorded, and then not rent for 2 years, 3 years?
So if they got the permit, they got the regulatory agreement registered, but they didn't do anything? No,
Yeah. The
use
fact that,
yeah,
because in special
die
permits
from
by
lack
the
of
planning
use.
board, if it doesn't,
Right.
construction doesn't start in 2 years, it lapses.
Well, it would come off, yes, actually it would, I'm sorry, because as long as that unit is not rented to a qualified tenant, then it would no longer appear in the SHI and the permit would not be valid. The permit is only valid as long as that unit is registered on the SHI. So if next year the fellow doesn't rent the apartment, the monitor would come to the town and say, there's nobody living there, that unit would come off the SHI, and
If it comes
the
off the
special
SHI, then the special permit's revoked.
yeah, excuse me, is invalid, so yes.
Contrast that with,
So he would lose the option to rent it?
No, it would still exist, but he would have to come back and, he would, at that point, he would have to come back
to the town.
to the town to get it reapproved.
What would happen, what would happen with the permit if the owner sells the home or dies, and what happens to the permit? Does it go on in perpetuity with the home, with the property?
Yes, as
It's
long as
regi-
it's meeting the requirements.
So a new person moving in to buy the house would have to buy it with that permit in place and use it as such.
Right, exactly. He would be subject,
And then sign an agreement similar to this with, and it's having this agreement
right,
that would kick off, you've now rented it, right? So if they
So
don't
if
do
they-
this.
If they bought the property and they didn't want that, then they would have it removed. The special permit would be revoked.
But it sounds like that's gonna happen automatically, even if they don't rent it, they're gonna lose that. Is that the
Well,
case?
if they don't
Yes.
rent it, but, a scenario that I can think of that would be in the opposite direction, let's say they started to rent to a family and the family liked the apartment and they wanted to continue to live there. The house is sold, the family indicates their willingness to stay on. I don't believe that would create any automatic provisions of ending this.
No, as long as they stay on.
Correct.
If the new owner of the property chooses not to rent it for whatever reason.
Yep.
The people leave, they don't want them there, whatever.
Yep.
Then that permit lapses.
Correct. It wouldn't, no longer be on the SHI, and therefore the permit would be revoked.
I guess part of what I'm wondering about that is, so you've got an affordable unit, and you've got someone living in that unit, and the person wants to sell the property. And is that person who's living in that affordable unit gonna get kicked out because the guy wants to sell the property, and he can do that,
Theoretically, just like
any
just in
apartment?
any other apartment, there's special requirements on how you would have to provide notice to the tenant, but much the same way as you would under a lease.
and that's one of the reasons I think that it doesn't terminate with the transfer of ownership, is because you could have somebody who'd signed a one-year lease, moved into the apartment, and the third month, the owner decides, well, I can't afford the house anymore, I'm gonna sell it. And it would be unfair to the tenant at that point to be expected to move out.
With the conversation on the number of units, there's a question raised by the board. I checked in with the zoning board. There's been 200 in-law apartments issued that they have in their records. And that's going back at least 15 years, so.
That are currently on the books.
On the books, as special permits for an accessory apartment or an in-law apartment.
You got that from the assessor?
No, I got that from Patty and the zoning board.
Now, when you say accessory or in-law,
Well, it's referred to as an accessory, but everyone's also saying it's an in-law.
Well, at this point, that's the only valid option that's available, right, is an in-law.
That's all there is.
Blood
That's
of
the
marriage.
family member
Blood of marriage,
stipulation.
right.
And that's over
So
that's over 70 years, or how long, 60 years.
But that's
So-
as far back as their records go.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I mean,
it's
but zoning came in 1959 or 55.
54,
But the
yeah.
accessory apartment didn't. The accessory apartment came into like in 90?
Yeah.
No, our bylaw did,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm saying, okay, yeah, you're right.
Before that, they didn't do that, but
So,
I'll bet you there's twice as many that
So-
have no permit and they're out there renting. That's the problem.
So just so I've got it, so you've got 200 that are on the books as of the
For-
90s roughly?
yeah, yeah. So that's,
200 sounds like a lot to me.
200 over 25 years, so it's just saying, it could
It
be,
is.
just for easy math, it could be 10 a year, so.
Those are what's on the books. Those are the
Right.
garages that have curtains.
Special
and
permit issue.
upstairs windows.
So we have,
I've seen plenty of
so we have three other public hearings coming up after this, and, I guess I'd like to see where the board is with this, in terms of, sure, one more, yeah, absolutely.
First of all, when you're talking about 1/3 of the space, people seem to be thinking of an addition, but there are plenty of homes in our neighborhood where one house has 6,600 square feet. 1/3 of that, okay? Basement, it's a walkout, easily made into an area with 2 bedrooms.
Well, livable, in our definition is defined livable space. It's
Yeah,
not
but-
everything.
No, but it can be the basement as long as it has egress.
Yes, as long as it has an egress.
Minimum windows, and it's defined what livable area the basement is, minimum head
I think what I
heights.
really wanna do, though, is I wanna go ahead, you finish with what you wanna say, and
Okay,
then we'll come back to the board and try to.
Because the last time I was here, I, got some information from hearing the conversation. And I went online, 2 towns that have this program is Barnstable and Saugus. Barnstable, in 2011 is when they, first approached this, and it had 6.9% of year-round housing stock, which qualified as affordable according to the pamphlet they put out. And then in 2014, it was 6.63% of the year-round housing stock qualified as affordable according to a March 21st, 2014 article in the Barnstable Patriot. Even though some people have taken advantage of the program. It said basically the most important part of the program is a program coordinator in its growth management department. And the program needs enforcement to make the program work. And I don't think that Georgetown has the capability to enforce this. This person who is doing the enforcing is a paid $75,000 person by the name of Debkowski. It said potential problems for other towns, combination of inadequate town resources, lack of enforcement of existing zoning restrictions, and stigmas associated with affordable housing. In order, for example, it's people actually applying for the permits. They don't want to because of the fact, one of the things they said in an article, God knows why, Cape Cod said, do I have to take Brazilians? Okay, this is one of the things. So that people are not likely to try to apply for the permits, they'd rather just try to rent on their own. It says that, for example, you need people to see exactly what's happening in town. They gave an example of a woman who, she was renting on her own, and she had an in-law apartment. She refurbished it, paid $3,000 to refurbish it, and then she put an advertisement in the paper. One of the town officials saw it, so they gave her an option to prove the apartment was legal, pull out the kitchen, or sign an for the accessory apartment program. And when she did, she could only rent it for $775. So the incentive is not there for people to come forward and try to get into this program. A town administrator in Wellfleet said that the building inspector responds when neighbors complain about illegal units, and other duties generally keep him too busy to seek them out himself. And that lets people take advantage of what the market will let them earn. And recently I've just talked to a few people. They're surprised about this, and they say they have known people here who are renting out their homes illegally for years. And on one street, she said she knows 3 people on one street. These are not in subdivisions, these are on streets just in Georgetown. So it says, in other towns, the administration responsibilities fall to existing town officials who already have plenty to do. outreach is limited and grants are sometimes unavailable. Then I looked at Saugus's, and they just started both the in-law and the moderate income accessory apartments. They did have everything outlined in the process, including off-street parking, the number of people who can live there, which was 3. States that the owner must be reside at the residence for a minimum of 185 days, which is apparently less than what you had just said. And it appointed, the town manager appointed a local project administrator to administer the units. And it says that the purpose of Saugus was to protect the character and property values of the town's single-family residential neighborhood. On the other hand, Georgetown's purpose was to meet the need for affordable housing by adding units to the town's affordable housing census. So to me, this actually sounds like Saugus is doing a better job of approaching this than Georgetown, because at least Saugus is trying to keep in mind the property values of the town's single-family residential neighborhoods. And it's interesting to note that this bylaw in Saugus was in 2009, okay? And from what I gleaned from the information from, I don't know your name, said that no permits were taken out. If I remember, you were questioning how many permits were taken out, and they said none. But that's, basically Saugus, and frankly, I think people who live in Saugus try to move to Georgetown, but that's, how I looked at it. And then I asked you about other towns, what are they doing? Well, Newton has 7.5% affordable housing, Wellesley 6.2, Brookline 8.1, and these towns do not meet the affordable threshold set by Massachusetts law, which according to an article in Boston Magazine, which just came out this month, this issue, it operates more of a goal rather than an actual requirement. And I understand the penalty, and it could subject the town to affordable housing developments that override local zoning, but Georgetown is already at 10%. I think that basically the average homeowner's rights are not protected. When we have owned 4 houses, we have always purchased in a subdivision because we feel that that subdivision has the similar housing, and your property values are more consistent and more protected. It said, last time it said a reference was made at the last meeting that the addition of apartment to a single-family dwelling would increase the value. Well, yes, that's true. However, the surrounding properties will decrease in value. Who would purchase a house knowing that the house next door was really a rental property? Why would you put up with noise, pets, parking issues of 2 families when you can go to another town and not have those issues? I think it will be difficult to sell a house if your neighbor has an apartment, an accessory apartment. And they will look into that whenever you're trying to sell. And so I urge the planning board to not recommend it.
Okay, thank you.
Would we have an opportunity to respond to any of that, or?
I don't think it's.
Okay.
If you have a strong feeling that you need to respond to something, by all means do, but try to keep it short.
Just very briefly, subdevelopments, most subdevelopments have their own requirements that are included in the deed and allowed, what is allowed or not allowed within that subdevelopment. The subdevelopment that they live in or that anyone lives in may already very well contain a provision that says that only a single family is allowed here and no apartments are allowed within the subdevelopment. That has nothing to do with the town's bylaw. If the town happens to pass a bylaw, the person would still have to comply with the laws of the subdevelopment itself. So.
Yeah, when we moved in,
I think we have to call it quits somewhere.
Just one little quick point, there's nothing preventing anybody in Georgetown from renting their house, so you could be living next to a rental tomorrow.
So I guess for each board member, where are you with how this is crafted? And I guess our charge is to either recommend that this goes forward as is, or the other option is to keep working on it and go to the following, town meeting, or the third option is just to plain reject it outright.
Right, you can either close the public hearing, make recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, either in favor or opposed to it. Or you can continue the public hearing, and keep working on it in anticipation of the next town meeting. Or you can close the public hearing and just say, we're gonna reopen, start a new process later on.
Who wants to start with how they feel about that, where they are with this?
I'm generally feeling pretty good about this. And I respect the concerns from the audience, but neighborhoods do change and, well, I think that there are a lot of controls that are in place that are at the state level and certainly the bylaw. This, you know, this document is what makes me hate this kind of stuff because whereas pursuant to, oh my God. So, I think that you've addressed the questions that the board has come up with diligence. And, so I would recommend to move forward with this. Part of it, frankly, is, I like the idea of shortening the process here and moving things forward, so.
Appreciate that. Tim?
I guess I'd probably like to think about it more. I hate to delay it, and my suspicion is that there's not gonna be a rush of 100 people applying for these permits the day after it's accepted anyway.
Absolutely.
I mean, historically, it sounds like other towns, though not many, haven't really had like a gold rush of applications.
There hasn't been one approved.
So, I mean, I guess as a starting point,
And these would,
I guess I could get behind that.
each would come back before the planning board before
Right.
it could move forward. So if, you know, if we saw an avalanche, the planning board itself could apply brakes.
Well, is that true?
Well, I think,
Is that the case?
Well, I mean, you could amend the bylaw. If there was a problem, you know, down the road, you could certainly,
But if we saw
But
projects that
initially, if we
looked like
approve
they
it as
didn't
it
have
is,
parking or,
and there were a non-rush, which is unlikely. you
Well,
know,
the planning board could approve, or close the public hearing, approve it in terms of recommending to the selectmen.
that's all we're doing.
Yeah, but it still needs to go through FinCom or in the selectmen as well as town meeting,
And
so.
then to the town.
yeah, we're not giving it the blessing,
we're not approving.
we're just moving it
We're
forward.
just moving it forward, or
Keeping it in committee.
I'll say, yeah, or we're, gonna,
We could bottle it up.
Tilly?
I think
Chair, I'll
what you're
speak
asking for is, recommending to get it to selectmen. We're recommending to get it to town meeting, that's what our vote should be. Not that we approve it or not approve it. That's,
But no,
Well,
I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
I think we have three things we can do our job is to move it forward
right,
with a recommendation or without a recommendation. And what I'm saying is there's also a third area in that, which is, let's say we like the concept, but, we have some particular questions that we need to think about and we're not comfortable with as currently written. Instead of just moving it forward then, with not recommending it to the selectmen, we could say, why don't we continue the public hearing and work those things out and get it to the next meeting, which would be in the fall. So,
I don't see as where a lot would change. I think we've been given the information we asked for.
that's right. I think they've worked hard on this.
yeah, they have.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
I like the concept a lot, and, if it, you know, and all said and done, getting it to town meeting, it's up to the people
Mhm.
Mhm,
who were present at that town meeting
right.
That
to
is true.
voice their questions and concerns. And it's, you know, if it, we have, at that time, if there seems to be too many, questions that, you know, you'll be present, you can always say pass it over. But if it flies through and there isn't any objections to it or no concerns, I think it's worthy of trying.
We're not
I
the
guess
special
let me-
permit granting authority for these, right? The
No,
zoning
correct,
board is.
correct, zoning board is.
And when it gets placed on the warrant, then it needs to go through legal counsel as well, so.
That's true, too.
I think-
Legal counsel step.
I think for myself, you guys have put a lot of work in on this, and thank you, you know, on behalf of the town, or for putting a lot of work in, and thank you for coming tonight, you know, also and sharing your concerns about it, cause it's not an easy matter. I personally, as one board member, the idea of affordable, housing, I'm all for it. I am concerned about how some of the wording is here, and I'm concerned with, there seems to be a lot of, it can be explained in words. The zoning board has the ability to. And I don't see what I'm used to as being part of the planning board, which is you usually have a fairly well-crafted set of criteria and rules and regs and standards that you have to meet, and that's what you base your decision on, not on a personal opinion using words that parking may or may not be a problem. And I'm struggling with that.
Can I help you a little bit?
Sure. Kick me up the side of the head.
It's a special permit, and those requirements are based on the state 48. The zoning board have to follow that guide from the state. And with a special permit, there's like 4 or 5 criterias. And that's what is not written here, because it's a special permit, and they know that. That's their purview. So, you know, that includes detrimental to the neighborhood, the noise, and anything referring to that, like parking would fit into that, detrimental to the neighborhood. The aesthetics, and issues like that. There's, you know, all relating to access to utilities in the town, too much water, utilities, all of that they can put into it. Plus, they can add conditions.
Yep.
If they see something that isn't, you know, they're not comfortable with, neighbors come out to the applicant.
Special permit's a high bar.
That's right.
Yeah. No,
And
I know,
it's a supermajority vote, so you really have to convince 4 people out of the 5. It's not that easy, and it's not a given either. People that apply for it should not expect to get approved, because they have to meet that criteria. The board does, and
once they get past that, then they have to also do the same thing with the state. So it's
that's right, and
I'm taking on the SHI.
this is
So
terrific. Most of everything.
So Rob, are you
is in
gonna
here.
close the public hearing from comments and, because now you're really into board discussion? Or,
my apologies there, Howard.
that's okay.
Yeah.
or are you just gonna, have the board to vote to continue the public hearing? So, I mean, that's the motion that should happen. Are you gonna close debate, or are you gonna continue the public hearing?
Well, I guess I
Someone needs to make a
You want a
motion.
motion and just vote?
Before the closing
Because we
of
can
the
discuss
motion,
too.
I would like to ask if there's anything you want to add to what you've submitted in the bylaw. Is there anything, any words based on
Other than the language change we talked about.
language changing, anything at all? Because now's the time to put it down.
We looked hard at a
if we're
comprehensive
going to get
bylaw.
into adding anything in addition to what we already have, then this gets continued.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, I'm gonna say no. We looked hard at a very complicated bylaw, and we felt that that was gonna be more of a problem for the town than it would be for the applicants, because then you hamstring things.
Okay.
So
Alright.
the
Make a
parking never
motion.
really was addressed, is that correct? Since I came in late.
And I'm just using parking
I
as.
don't know how
one-
you would address it,
I'm just using
really.
parking as one example. I'm just concerned that there are other examples. As a planner, I'm not used to, the way the special permit is written. There's a lot of room for interpretation in it, and it is a high bar to set. And by nature, I think of sitting on this board, and that I'm attracted to this side of the fence, you know, I prefer to have more, you know, this is what you do, this is how you do it, and if you don't like the rules, then you go and get them changed with the town, kind of thing. And it just seems like there's a lot of, potential for some negatives to come of this. It just doesn't, you know, I, you know, 10 units per year, and I appreciate your honesty with, it's an arbitrary number. But I think 10 units a year, that shouldn't be an arbitrary number. That should be a number that has reasoning behind it. I don't know what the reasoning would be, but,
But this
So
is something
anyways.
that might very well be simply market-driven. That,
Could
is
be.
there a market for that now?
could be.
Um,
So I
people
guess
aren't
it's.
gonna do it if it's gonna make them go broke.
So if the board wants to make a motion to, you know, as Howard was saying, we can close the public hearing and vote, to move on as is, or not, or we can continue the public hearing.
But we can't close the public hearing and then not vote yet amongst ourselves. Cause Harry's
You
not
close the
here.
public hearing, you can't take any more testimony.
No more, it's all
Yeah.
You're gonna need to
Well,
vote.
We can
And-
Discuss it and
discuss
vote
it,
it.
we can discuss it. and
Wait,
vote
well, the
amongst
board needs to
ourselves.
vote tonight if they're gonna recommend this or not, because the warrant.
The warrant,
is-
it's a
is-
schedule thing.
is quickly closing, and
Yeah.
when the warrant closes, you might, there's also the timeline of after the warrant closes, as a certain date, it needs to be, being vetted through with town council, and then it gets returned back to the selectmen, and then it needs to be advertised a certain number of days before town meeting. So-
Did Harry weigh in at all?
Well,
Were you able to-
Harry's not here, and he didn't, call me.
Didn't get you in touch with you?
No, and I
Convenient.
wouldn't want a verbal, I'd much rather have been able to read some type of, written and have some type of exhibit for,
I agree.
for
Can
the
we
record.
vote to close the public hearing, vote to move it forward with our recommendation, adding comments? So that some of your trepidations, you can address them.
You need to vote tonight
It's
to
either vote
recommend it as it
recommend it or
is
not
tonight.
recommend it.
Yes,
Can I
but I'm asking if
chime in
we
on
can
that a little?
add comments.
You
so
can't
that-
add comments.
No, not add comments
When I think we,
to the document, but add comments to our approval.
That's in the motion. You're gonna vote on a motion
I can maybe help. out.
recommending it to the Board of Selectmen.
With comments.
With what comments?
I don't think.
Some
I
of us
don't-
have had comments.
And when are you gonna decide those comments?
No, it's not, it's just
I
comments
think,
to share our opinion.
I
Or-
think the only thing that that goes to the selectmen is gonna be a scorecard. And it's gonna say, the planning board has voted.
And it would be
4
inappropriate
to 0
to
or
say
3 to
that
0.
individuals had comments.
I don't know how you do that, cause otherwise. then-
You make either a written or an oral report to the selectmen, that's what I'm gonna do.
Uh-huh.
And that is consistent with what the motion was and how it was voted.
Yeah, if they wanna know, they can read the minutes for the meeting as
Right.
well.
Right.
I'd just like to add
All
one,
right.
at town
Sure.
meeting, you will have a chance to make your comments.
Of course,
So, before this gets approved,
course.
I just want, you know, so it won't go, if one of you has an objection to it, and not even, when this is up for a vote, when the planning board is asked, all of you will have an opportunity to make a comment at that point.
and I'm actually quite comfortable with the whole basic concept, if it goes to the town and let the townspeople decide. I'm really comfortable with that, so.
All right, I'll make a
Anyways.
motion to close the hearing.
A second.
Okay, there's been a motion, it's been seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so let's, make a motion to,
I make a motion to recommend to the selectmen to support the provisions in this bylaw and present it to town meeting.
I second that.
So motion's been made to recommend approval of, recommend
Inclusion of this bylaw on
inclusion
the
of this
town
bylaw on
warrant.
the town warrant to the selectmen. And a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I,
All opposed? Aye. So, there you have it. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you for your
Thanks a lot.
time, we really appreciate it.
Good work.
4-0.
No, 3 to 1.
Everyone, he just said opposed.
All right. Next up, solar energy, oh boy.
This is not my expertise.
I don't think it's anyone's.
Please.
Okay.
I just love to hear you say photovoltaic. That's my favorite part.
Every time I
of this
looked at
whole-
this, I came up with something.
Did you put my pen back? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have the solar energy bylaw continued from the January 14th.
The draft that was included in the packet addressed all the concerns that was discussed at the last public hearing. So tonight, you should not be looking into content, you should be looking into just clarifying if there's a few typos, a grammatical mistake, a typographical, that's it. Because you also need to vote on this tonight.
I concur. We want clarifications would be legitimate tonight. Typos, crossing Ts, dotting Is would be, but if we find that we're going into, any kind of substantial
Section E,
reviews,
paragraph, yeah, forget it.
then we've gotta either take it off the agenda and move it till the next one, or,
Continue the public hearing.
I mean, that thing.
Well, the thing about what I meant was that our last meeting, when we had discussion, I thought those were changes that we had approved, or with a consensus, I don't think we voted, and then I didn't see it in here, so I don't know what happened. And,
Well, what happened was that Mary Ellen took notes, and I took those notes and put them into this draft.
okay, so maybe we were talking all at once.
No, we were really clear about, I had a nice list.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Do you have some specific,
Yes,
items,
particularly,
just,
at the top of
for
my
now?
head, I had brought up the groundwater regulation. And it's not mentioned anywhere here, and I thought that there was a consensus that, put it in. And it wasn't here, mentioned here at all.
I don't,
Do you
I don't
recall
re-
that?
I recall you talking about it, I don't recall a consensus being,
right, that's what I remember. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
recall,
agree.
I would agree, that's what I recall too. I do remember you talking about it, and I don't think it, I don't remember consensus being reached on it.
So is there a consensus now?
I don't think so.
Is it,
I think that was it. I think that was,
you didn't want
that
it?
was the attempt, I think
Correct.
that's what everyone was saying.
I thought it was a
Yeah.
positive, all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I had, on page 2, in general, I think, on E, I think what you mean, I don't think a civil engineer is who you want. You want an electrical engineer,
All plans, I don't.
but I'm
think
not sure.
I don't think the planning board would want an electrical engineer to produce plans and maps.
Yeah. These are the documents,
Well, why would a civil engineer do,
site plan.
Yeah, we're not looking, I don't think we're looking at the technology, the solar technology and transforming it into electricity and all of that. I think this is, as you say, the site plan.
okay, all right. And then when you mentioned down here and further down, you have, the standards for interconnecting distributed generation as published by the town of Georgetown. Do the members have a copy of that? I never saw it, I don't think.
You did, it was handed out when we first started on the bylaw.
That was, I didn't know that. Do you all have that?
Where are, what are you referring
On
to?
page 2,
Item F, under utility notification.
What about it?
The solar energy facility owners and operators intend to install an interconnected customer-owned generator.
do you have a copy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Tim?
Do I have a copy?
Yeah, because I've never seen it. If I was passed out, I missed it. How thick is this?
It's over 50 pages, I think.
Oh, wow.
It's something that I sent out in a PDF, and if people wanted a hard copy, I would have printed it out. But that whole interconnected agreement, that's all under the jurisdiction of the light department.
Yeah, I don't think we would wanna,
You wouldn't want to touch
we
it.
want any part of that. No, I mean, it would, just
I don't want
instant contradiction, interest, and
And then when
confusion.
we got down to emergency services plan,
Which number is this?
Or
Oh,
G1,
G1?
maybe this is
Yeah.
not changes, but questions that I have. Prior to issuance of a building permit, then after a site approval is approved and we've gone through the process, then the applicant has to go to the police and fire and the building inspector? I think that should be,
Whenever you get a site plan application, it's distributed to all the town departments for their review and comment. Basically, what this is requiring is that after the permit's issued and you can start construction, you need to provide an emergency service plan. And I wouldn't consider plan being a flat document. A plan is, if this emergency occurs, this is where you can find the emergency key to access the site. These are the numbers to call.
wouldn't you want to have that during site approval?
I think that site
Place-
approval would be at a higher level, and this is much more specific
This is,
with
this,
people's phone numbers.
this is after the project is approved, you know, so they're not wasting their time going off in that direction. But before the building permit, before they can get access to this, they just issue these written plans
So what
to the
if
safety
the plan
departments.
comes down back a little bit different and these three people decide that the access road should be over here and not there because
No,
of
it has
safety
nothing to
reasons?
do with the plan, Tilly. It has to do with emergency contact information, how you're gonna respond to an emergency. They'll have plenty of comments on the site plan.
But they're
during-
saying shall confirm adequacy of emergency access. They're saying that here.
But we're gonna be looking at that again at the macro
Well,
level.
no,
This is a detailed
Is-
emergency plan.
This is also saying, I think what you're wanting to, it says the PGA shall confirm adequacy of the design, I'm just paraphrasing, with these local officials prior to
Prior.
the approval, prior to the approval of the site plan.
Right.
So all those issues are taken care of as we would with any site plan, the size of the road, that they have access, the fire chief can get there, the police guy can get there. So we take care of all of that, permit granting authority,
I have no-
prior to site plan approval.
That's a good sentence, but as far as the other one, I didn't,
This is a different type of plan that they're talking about. The solar energy facility owners shall provide a written plan. It's a written document, which is what Howard's trying to say, which is, you know, we have our keys here, and if, there's this, you go over here, and I think it makes sense.
that's,
And again, this is, what we're gonna vote on tonight is to recommend or not that this be put on the warrant.
Yes. Pending changes made tonight.
Mhm.
okay, the electrical engineer. I think that those were the
Was
key
that it?
ones, yeah.
Okay. Tim, sir? You all set? Bob?
Yeah, this is another one I'd like to move forward.
I didn't
Alright.
receive any written comments from Harry.
All right,
Well, I did, and they were revised, they were minor
all right.
in terms of, referencing.
So these are, some clarifications. If you start with, the very 165, 135, page 1 of 7, very beginning, item B. Provisions set forth in this section shall take precedence over all other sections. I would recommend striking all to clarify that it's just over other sections. When you say all, it's such an inclusive, it can be counterproductive to what you're trying to do. I think that would be a clarification. If the board thinks so, then that should get struck. If they don't think so, then we will just keep moving on. Guys.
Why is it?
I think it's just
not
an
a-
extra
it's
word.
not
I
a
don't
big
think it
deal.
really is.
It's an extra word, and the word all implies such a broad reach that it could be considered contradictory to if you taking precedent over everything else versus just taking precedent over other sections. I think it's a clearer statement,
Okay,
but it's not huge.
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
Then?
okay.
Okay, so that would just get struck. Let's see, there seems to be, I've seemed to find some confusion in when local, state, and federal is referred to, and what I would suggest to clarify purpose and intent would be to add C, and it would say, in cases of conflicting ordinances, the more restrictive shall apply. Otherwise, when you do come up into that situation in any ordinance, sometimes you run into a problem.
What page is that on?
This is still under purpose and intent, page 1 of 7. It would be adding item C after A and B. And it's just saying, in cases of conflicting ordinance, the more restrictive shall apply.
That sounds almost like boilerplate. I mean, that sounds like the
Yeah.
kind of thing you might want to see in the other one, in the affordable housing one.
Okay,
I mean,
that's fine, total fine. No strong feelings, so moving on. Applicability, the section applies, this section applies to solar energy facilities proposed to be constructed after the effective date of this section. This section also pertains to the physical modifications that materially alter. I would strike materially. It's too vague. It opens up what the hell does materially mean, and I would just say to physical modifications that alter the type, configuration, or size of these installations. I think that's a lot clearer. If you alter it, then this applies.
Well, materially means substantially.
yeah, if you,
Yeah, but
if
that-
if
what I'm
you're gonna
saying-
use this bolt instead of that bolt, you know.
What I'm saying is, it's just a really, whenever I see that word materially in these kinds of things, or substantially,
It leaves a lot
it
of.
leaves a lot of room for interpretation,
But I mean, that's why you would put it there,
to leave room for
to
interpretation.
leave room for
right.
interpretation, so that if it is a trivial change, remove the decal, okay?
It just, if anybody wants to come back at you and say, you know, it's arbitrary and capricious, that's where they start looking at those things. So
Okay.
all right. I would like, I think for applicability A, B, the very end where it says, as allowed for in section 165, appendix 3. It's actually use regulation schedule. If you just added that to it, that would clarify section 165, appendix 3, because it's appendix 3A or something. Doesn't exactly match. They call it appendices in the bylaw. So anyways, if you just add use regulation schedules, there's no mistaking it. Question on definitions, page 1 of 7. What is the purpose of the solar energy facility definition? This is just a question to you, Howard. I'm sorry to be springing it on you tonight, but what,
Yeah, this is just a boilerplate off the state template to describe what a solar energy facility is.
because it for me, it confuses a little bit the first three, specifically the first one and the third one. I mean, why do we even need that? Because you're talking, you label the commercial solar energy
Well,
facility.
and it's alphabetical, but if you were to take it in order of importance, then it would be, this is what a solar energy facility, if you have a development come in
Yeah,
and it contains these things, then it's a solar energy facility. It defines what
what it is.
And
what
it's,
it is
it's
for this
referred to specifically, solar
Is it
energy
referred to in
facility.
numerous
over and
places?
over and over
It's
and over.
not it's not only just referred to as commercial or on-site. It's actually, there are referrals to solar energy.
right, and then
Good enough, good enough.
subset
Good
is what would be considered commercial,
Yep, yep.
and then subset would be if it's ground mounted, and
Okay.
then subset would be on site.
Okay, thank you. On page 2 of 7, fees, we need to come up with, at the end there, it says planning board to decide fees, suggest square foot ratio, area ratio, question mark, and,
The reason for this is that in our site plan, to determine filing fee for a site plan, it states, the filing fee shall be 15 cents for 1,000 square foot, or per square foot, no less than 1,000. So when you're talking about a solar energy facility, how do you gauge what the filing fee is? Because are you gonna require that every solar panel be considered as a structure or roof? So
so how would this work then? So,
I would suggest that you put in wording that states the filing fee is established as the minimum required in a standard site plan application or site plan approval application.
perfect. So you're assured the minimum,
Yeah,
and if it changes, you can still get that change.
and the minimum right now is 1,000, and if
So
the board
that's-
revisit fees and says the minimum now is gonna be 1,500, well, this will
Okay.
by default change to
Is the
1,500.
board comfortable with that? That we're establishing a
Sure.
minimum fee to match the site plan? minimum fee?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What would you estimate, how long would this take, do you think, an application? How long would it take? How many people would be involved? That's how I can think about this. It seems you got it, like, it's a lot of pages, it's the state, the federal law, a lot of people involved. It's time consuming for the employees and staff.
Being paid for an escrow account. Because this requires site plan. You're still gonna establish
Yeah, but your salary,
That's all
assistant-
done with site plan.
The money goes into the general fund, right?
I-
No,
The application fee, where's that go?
it goes into general fund, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about all the consulting and everything else, that's all done with
That's
the
different.
escrow.
That's different, they
And,
pay for
and
that.
there'll be just as much involvement on the town with this as any other, application.
Yeah.
So, do I hear,
Oh, yeah,
Support for the-
definitely,
Tim,
Sure.
support?
linking it to
So-
the,
What
site
did
plan.
you, can you repeat what
So
you?
it's gonna be, the filing fee for solar facilities shall comply with minimum site plan requirements or something to that effect?
Oh, I thought you were gonna put the $1,000. Right.
Well,
No, that's
whatever it
in-
is,
that's in the site
It's in the site plan already, but if you do 1,000 and next year they go up to 1,500, then you're stuck at 1,000. But the site plan minimum goes up elsewhere, 1,500. So if you just staying with the minimum, and as it goes up over time, you keep getting the minimum.
But
it's using the
okay.
same formulation, yeah.
Yeah, but isn't, how do I wanna phrase this? All fees for whatever does not have to be in the bylaw, period. The fees are established by the boards.
Well,
Yeah,
we're saying is we're
currently-
linking this fee
currently,
to another.
The fee schedule doesn't
algorithm.
state anything about, a solar energy facility. And what is established in the site plan filing fee, the standard to establish the fee doesn't apply to a solar energy facility because of how it's calculated. When you apply for a site plan approval, it states 15 cents per square foot with a minimum of $1,000 filing fee.
Okay.
And we
But there
could
aren't any
say
buildings in a
that,
solar
but then
energy.
we're locked into that.
Right.
So by doing it by reference, it's
Now, you-
managed in one spot.
So we, so
You,
we,
you can remove this whole section on fee,
Yeah.
but then you're gonna need to revisit the fee schedule and just
Yeah,
vote on what it is.
I think what we, just so that we can keep moving along, I think what we have are three on the board that are comfortable with that, and you're not comfortable with that, which is fine, but I just wanna keep moving forward. Okay? All right. So, all plan maps and the next one, general. Actually picking up on what Tilly had, all plans, maps, and pertinent documents shall be prepared, stamped, and signed by the appropriate professional engineer. Because you may have a surveyor signing, those documents, and, or landscape architect, Howard. They
Si-
are
Signed by the appropriate,
by the appropriate professional engineer or landscape architect.
okay,
Um,
because of the requirement for the landscape plan.
Yeah, but they could also be doing a site plan. We allow landscape
Okay.
architects to sign site plans. Page 3 of 7, gotta stick up for the profession.
Job security.
Page 3 of 7, A, criteria in the first paragraph in the review and evaluation of solar energy facility applications and making a written final determination, the PGA shall consider but not be limited to the following reasonable regulations. I would get rid of reasonable. I just say to the following regulations.
Well, that's the requirement. We can have regulations providing they're reasonable. That's the state requirement.
Yeah, but that's kind of patting yourself on the back and saying, these regulations, which we smart people deem
Well,
reasonable.
that's why it's there.
That's why I
because
would take it out.
That's,
I
that's the template in every single one of them. It has said that from the
Yeah.
state down.
That's like a
Well,
19th century
Even,
holdover.
the 40A requires you're allowed.
So it's
to
just,
be
it's just,
reasonable.
it's just a word. Let's vote on it. How do you feel?
Off with its
guys?
head.
I say off with its head. Tim?
Off the top.
Okay, so that one's gone. Page 4 of 7, item 10, there's just some typos there.
Yeah, a description, that's just a ghost that comes out.
All right.
You
Page
need the
5.
Ghostbusters. You gotta
Page
kill
5
that.
of 7, B at the bottom, design standards, lighting. Lighting of a solar energy facility shall comply with the town of Georgetown, state and federal law. Town of
Replace
Georgetown.
local with town of Georgetown.
Yeah, yeah. Cause we have a permit written well for it. And then everything after that, where it says, and at the end of that, it says, and shall be reasonably shielded from, and you go on to the next page, 6 of 7, abutting properties where feasible lighting. That is all in the ordinance.
So it can be
So
removed.
just delete it. And some of it is actually contradicting what the ordinance is talking about.
Okay.
C, all landscape areas shall be properly maintained and monitored for at least 2 growing seasons. Shrubs and trees that die shall be replaced by the applicant or property owner at their expense within not one, but within the first growing season. When you say one growing season, that sometimes gets interpreted as a whole year, but the first growing season is a season, is like spring or is like fall. There's long-term maintenance.
Well, can we go back with the lighting now? Do you want that to state as per site approval 165-83? I think, I would hate to see anybody ignore this,
Well,
it could fall through the cracks.
There's plenty of references
Yeah.
to site plan approval and in site plan approval references to the lighting requirements.
It's right in the site, it's right in there, the approval requirements, and I think, as long as we specify the town of Georgetown, ordinance like that, it's calling attention to it, I think. And then, the last page, 7-7, G, operations, monitoring, and maintenance, number 1, minimum maintenance responsibilities. Just to clarify what happens after this is decommissioned, I think there needs to be a sentence that tells them what happens after decommissioning with their maintenance responsibilities. So you could add at the very end, after decommissioning, property owner shall be responsible for all maintenance. Because it doesn't say anywhere in there what happens after decommissioning. And then, the very last one, D at the bottom of the page, decommissioning, stabilizing or revegetation of the site is necessary to minimize erosion. I would insert, because there's no way to measure what this plan is gonna be, I would insert to clarify that the PGA may require a landscape plan for post-decommissioning approval. Otherwise, you're just using words to talk to an applicant about what they're gonna do.
I like that,
Can
actually.
you state that again for me?
PGA may require a landscape plan for post-decommissioning approval. What my concern is that some guy doesn't come in and put in an annual rye that for 1 year grows up and looks great, and then it all dies and never comes back again, and you have all, the erosion was taken care of, but you have no. So that was it for that. All right, thanks for your patience. So do we get a, approval, a, motion
To close.
close?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded to close the, public hearing for solar energy bylaw. A motion to recommend to selectmen, put it on warrants.
So moved.
Do I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to, recommend to the selectmen to place on the upcoming warrant, the solar energy bylaw with corrections as noted.
Yep.
Okay, any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Unanimous. All right. Schedule of uses bylaw amendment.
Yeah, open the public hearing.
All right, I'd like to open the public hearing. Continue from January 14th. Schedule of uses. Public hearing. Howard?
Definitions and use regulations, intentional use schedule has not changed except for the inclusion of solar energy facility under business uses. I consulted with the town's zoning code enforcement officer, and this is where he would like to see such a use placed in terms of a use category.
Okay. Any motion from the board to
Close the public hearing.
close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
So it's been motioned and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I hear a motion to recommend to the selectmen to place on the warrant the amended schedule of uses?
So moved. And second.
And seconded. So it's been motioned and seconded. Do I hear any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. The last public hearing of the night is number 4, modification to approve special permit 161 West Main Street, continued from January 28th. Motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Howard, you wanna?
So, I received, comments from, a planning board member, and, this is basically, the revised, final. And it addresses it's a certification to be signed by the chairman about what the scope of the modification was. And then there's a summary that describes, what it was and how the recorded approval of conditions and special conditions will be modified. This document of modification will also be recorded at the registry as deed, so whenever anybody references the property, they're gonna see the original and they'll see the modified, so they'll understand what was originally approved and what the current approval is. And all the only changes that it addresses is, the modification request is for deletion of the exterior lift shown on the plan. Detail number 1, the exterior lift was shown in response to a site plan condition relating to providing universal access to the basement level. And then there is reference being made to the supporting document stated by the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, which you saw stating in a finding that it was not required, so.
Okay.
Why does the first page say RE6 Norino Way site plan?
Because that was a typo. The one you're gonna sign tonight has the correct address. Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Well, let's sign the one for Narino Way.
So, do I hear a motion to modify the approved special permit?
I move we modify the
Site plan.
site plan
Excuse me.
as summarized by Howard.
Second.
So it's been motioned and seconded to approve modification to the site plan as presented by Howard for 161 West Main Street. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Close the public hearing.
Public hearing's closed.
So the planning board needs to sign the front page, back page, and Rob, you need to sign the second page.
Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the
Second.
public hearing.
So it's been motion seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no
No.
discussion, all in favor? Aye, to close the
Aye.
public hearing. Unanimous.
Included in your packet under new business is documentation provided to me from the zoning board of appeals, who is hearing a, application from the applicant. And this is in response to, the letter I included in correspondence. They are appealing to the zoning board of appeals the building inspector's determination that the applicant file a modified site plan before the planning board. 3 Farm Lane had a site plan approved in August of 2000. There was no as-built provided, and therefore the the building inspection department could not determine if the requirements of the 1999 site plan approval were met. Today, the approved project is still not complete. Phases 3 and 4 are not built, no plan to construct. So he said that in his opinion, it is the best interest to modify the conditions of phase 3 and 4 by going before the planning board seeking a modification of a previous approved site plan approval. So this appeal is being done with the zoning board. The zoning board is looking for the planning board to give any opinion that they may offer up about the appeal before them.
Well, I think the planning board can't do that, because if in fact it comes back to us as a site approval modification or whatever, we can't make we can't give the idea, the interpretation that we've already approved it or disapproved it. So it's
We can't offer up any type of predisposition of opinion.
absolutely, so if the planner wants to go, that's fine, or
The
staff.
planner can attend as a member of the public, but I won't be able to answer any questions. I believe the building inspector will be there to give his testimony.
Can we issue can we authorize Howard to issue a memo from the planning board or on behalf of the planning board that simply states we see no reason to disagree with the building inspector's decision? Just to let them know that as a board,
Well,
we see no reasons to disagree with what he's saying.
What was in phase 3 and 4? Were there conditions like?
The conditions that were in, the conditions of the 1999 approved site plan included a phase 3 and 4 that were never done. So there's no way to determine if they're in conformance of their approved site plan or not. That's the requirement of the modification.
well,
Basically, you have X amount of time to complete a project, or your permit is, typically.
They haven't done phase 3 and 4, so how do you know if they've met their site plan requirements or not?
But
There's
was
a-
there anything in those, the phase 3 and 4 that had to do with finishing something that was?
Important.
Required
Yeah,
for
there was-
phases 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't know what
So it's
was
a
in that.
building.
but-
I think that is the crux. We don't know. There could be, and there might not be. But without it being completed, we can't tell.
So really, the planning board can instruct the town planner to write back to the zoning board saying, we can't offer up any opinion because to do so would predispose the opinion of the board if they ended up coming in for a modification of the site plan.
You know, but as a staff person, you can answer questions. You're not a voting member and anybody in the staff in the town, other than the members that would be hearing the
Well,
site
you'd
approval.
have to be kind of careful
Definitely
about
can answer.
what you would address, but you're a professional at this, and I think you know
Sure.
what you can, I mean, you can talk about
Yeah.
the
You will-
kind of
you
the
will
technical.
I could be in there as describing the site plan and said, this is what was done in phase 3 and 4. And it's been determined by the building inspector that this criteria has not been met.
Right, there's no opinion there, there's no predisposition in that kind of comment.
I think it's either a decision of yes or no from the ZBA, and it should be as simple as that. Do you do it or don't you do
So
it? And that's it.
There's no definition of phase 3 and 4?
What's that?
There was no definition of what phase 3 and 4 were?
I would assume it'd be on the site plan.
I thought that was included in the packet for you to see what,
I think it was.
there was no as-built plan provided.
The thing is though, that even if, let's say there was something, let's say all of what was not completed in phases 3 and 4, let's say they were nothing more than, watering a plant, you know, that's all it was, and it didn't substantially affect the project at all. It still wouldn't be part of our jurisdiction or part of, where we would, crossing over the bounds, if we, to comment on something like that with the ZBA at this point in time, so,
I-
it almost, it.
I think there's a lot more than missing, looking at what you presented, like, of course, now you can't walk it, and you don't have any as-bills,
No.
because what you attached was an addition on an original building. That was the 1999 hearing. So back then, when the first building was built, you couldn't find a file? Because the planning board would have had to hear that one as well.
No, I didn't, no
No?
record of file.
But
But
I think-
the fact is that the building inspector has stated, you didn't, you built the addition, but you didn't provide an as-built to let us know that it was built per plan,
Yeah.
so.
I mean,
Or they just can't find it, but they don't know whether there was one. You know, it's like a.
Right.
but so, how, you know, as far as, you know, this is really, FYI information.
It is, this is a matter before the zoning board of appeals that has to do with an action of the planning board 15 years ago. And depending upon how the zoning board either agrees with the appeal or disagrees, if they disagree, then the planning board can expect the zoning board, the building inspector and all this material to come in with an application for modification.
I guess as one member on this board, I'd like the ZBA to know that we care about what they're doing. And I forget how you phrased it in the beginning, which was, something to the effect of, you know, we can't comment on this, but, you know, to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
It's just to acknowledge it, and
That's a good idea.
we can't comment on it. And I don't know if it's one step too far in the process, but then to also say, we see no reason to disagree with the building inspector's interpretation. I don't know if that's overstepping our bounds or not at this point.
I'd kind of prefer not to even go into it, only because we haven't opened the can of worms yet,
Sure.
you know.
That's the
But,
thing.
but I
This
mean,
is not a typical special permit application before the planning board where, for instance, there's an application for special permit before the planning board for Noonan's. And the zoning board started getting into some site plan considerations to see how the use would be on the site, to see if it'd be detrimental or not. And the planning board said, they're gonna need to come in for a site plan approval anyhow. We'll make our comments at that point.
And I think that should be the same process for the zoning board. They should not go into the site approval requirements.
They're just
Into-
hearing the appeal of
Yeah.
the building inspector.
It's, like I said, it should be a yes or no, but my question too would be, we may get an application, say if they say yes, and he gives us the application, we have to review it to see, are we, based on our site approval, do we call this a modification, or do we tell the applicant he's gotta start and do a full-fledged site approval? Start at the beginning.
Right, and
Yeah,
that's not a public hearing, that's a public meeting.
Yeah.
It's just what you just did with 161 West Main Street, where you made the determination that you haven't provided as-bills. This work hasn't been done. This is a major modification from the plan, so you need to do a whole public hearing.
So could would the board be comfortable authorizing Howard to, acknowledge receipt of the information on 3 Farm Lane from the ZBA and thank them, but that we can't comment on it for the various reasons we
Yeah,
discussed?
I would be okay with that.
Yeah,
Sure.
something.
Okay. So,
Before moving into planning office, I just want to note the few remaining items in the planning packet. There is a public hearing notice that was provided to us from the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding modification of a special permit. I don't see any concern directly for the planning board. And then also I received.
I'm sorry, would you be going to that meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
For 3 Farm Lane.
Yeah.
I also included in the packet, email correspondence from the Conservation Commission agent Steve Pazimski regarding an update, on 47 West 47 West Street / Tiz Junkyard. Containment of the site, in the town's, Zone 2 drinking water. Cleanup's been 13 years. DEP Commission determined that the site is clean. So, there may be in the near future somebody coming in for development of the old Tids junkyard.
2 questions.
Jack Moultrie would be happy about that.
When the DEP says, I'm sure the fire department would be ecstatic, because that building is ready to go. DEP has determined the site is clean, for starting to build foundations, or to dig
Well, it's in
foundations,
the
or-
Zone 2 aquifer area for the drinking supply. So my understanding is that DEP says the site is clean, then that's the wellhead area for drinking water at Georgetown.
Well,
So-
what about the junk that's in there that I can see from my backyard? Not now, but once the snow melts. I mean, when they say clean, they don't mean clean, like
No,
it's,
no, the site mitigation is still
okay.
not done, but in
And-
terms of,
I'm the abutter
yeah.
to this property, so that has to be on the record.
So
Yeah.
that day letter just leads me to believe it's over with them.
When the
Did I
vote,
miss something?
due to lack of eligible commissioners to vote, the applicant withdrew from the filing to construct houses and will refile. So that's saying that,
They withdrew without prejudice.
right, so that they'll have to go before the ZBA and start the whole process again.
Yeah. Because of the lack of a quorum.
That's very interesting.
Is that the zoning board letter or the Concom letter?
This is the COMCOM letter.
Well, yeah.
They may have had before, the commission, a desire to construct. And this is, they'll go before the commission first to find out if what we're proposing is gonna get passed, what's your jurisdiction,
Yeah, to start the,
before coming here.
yeah.
So, they withdrew and they'll be starting a fresh application. And it's not clear in the letter if that's been riding for 13 years or not, but
Yeah, I mean, the whole process has
has.
gone on for
It
20,
has.
but the thing is, they got a ZBA approval under 40B, so it never came here, never went to the,
Yeah, and that's since expired.
So the
40B is expired, as I
that's-
understand it.
So they're gonna have to go back to the ZBA and,
They're starting
Good
fresh,
point.
yeah. Under planning office, administrative assistant, everybody needs to thank Mary Ellen for her time.
You were
She's
here.
she's here till we have a replacement, but she's already being felt missed in the planning office. So
I'm sure.
she'll be here depending upon how well her birthday vacation goes till the end of March.
What's your birthday vacation?
Oh, I haven't, it's not definite yet. My birthday's at the end of March, so I said I'd help fill in the office until the end of March. And then even with meetings, if you needed, you won't need me.
It's nice of you,
Was
thank
that,
you.
was that always the plan?
No,
Jump us.
you came in late. I got offered a job closer to home and a little bit different and it's a good career opportunity.
She
so-
got an offer she couldn't refuse.
I'm the clerk for the liquor licensing in Gloucester. I mean, come on.
Everybody's friend.
She's gonna be start driving a nice new car.
No.
So,
I'll still,
Vacation is gonna be in New Zealand.
no. Orlando if I go.
the planning office is suffering a great loss, so, as well as the planning board. It was a great fit. So that being said,
It's always sad when things like that happen, but it's always exciting
true.
too.
Yeah.
It's always exciting too.
It was a hard decision, you guys.
the what happens is that it needs to be, the position has been advertised internally for 10 days. And then it goes out. If there's no qualified applicants that come forward internally, then after 10 days it's advertised in the newspapers, and we start going through that process with resumes and everything else. We've received an applicant resume and letter of interest from a current town employee. So I would like the planning board to review her cover letter and resume and offer me comments at the next meeting. And my impression is that she is well qualified in terms of her background.
It looked, yeah, she looks.
But she doesn't have the planning experience that Mary Ellen does, which was a great help, but she's got the other experience for administrative assistant duties and
Town office.
in the town office.
And it does help hiring from within in terms of longevity sometimes, so.
It does.
Not that longevity's an issue or anything. Just saying.
I'm taking my nameplate.
All right, anything else, Howard?
No, that's it.
Thanks, Mary Ellen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good
guys.
luck.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll,
We'll see you again.
yeah,
I will
All right,
look at
motion?
I
my,
haven't left yet.
That we
I
adjourn
will look at
this
your,
lovely
my
meeting.
3,
Been a
leaf,
motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
booklet and think of you.
Jim?
Second.
Yeah. So the
Had to wake 'em
motion,
up.
second to
Yeah.
adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, unanimous, all right.
Oh,
9:50.
excuse me.
Howard, my wife.